Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 9 of High Rollers, the review series for the most expensive classic cars of Gran Turismo 6. And in this episode we're featuring what is, along with a couple of others, the most expensive car in the game. Obviously, because there is no single expensive car in the game, there are a number which all cost the most. And that is, of course, 20 million credits. And by all accounts, that's a lot of money. You can buy a lot of great cars for 20 million credits. Or you can buy one old, slow in comparison, racing car. And it's my job to tell you why you should want to. So, what does this car have to offer? It is, of course, the Ferrari 250 GTO. It's from 1962. It's a massively iconic Ferrari, one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic classic Ferraris. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the car. I know that happens quite often where hugely popular cars I'm not a fan of, and ones which are obscure and unloved I tend to like. That's just the way my taste goes. The reason why I don't like it is because I just don't see what's so special about it. Sure, it looks nice, it was successful, it's fast, but so were plenty of other cars. I would much rather look at a Shelby Daytona Cobra than a Ferrari 250 GTO, but of course that's down to personal taste. And it's not that I don't like Ferraris, I love the 250 LM, but of course that isn't on the game. This car is on the game. It's of course a front-engine rear-wheel drive car, which is rarer for Ferrari. They have made a few, but they generally tend to go for mid-engines. And as we said, it's a very successful racing machine. And strangely enough, for a racing model, you can paint it, as you can see, because of course it's red in the dealership, whereas mine is yellow. And I'm sure most of you guys have probably seen people driving these in lobbies at some point, usually cruise lobbies, and they'll generally be painted. Now, one of the great things about the car, although I'm not a huge fan of it, I will say it looks good in pretty much any colour. I think overall it looks best in either red, yellow, silver, or the typical Ferrari Nart blue. It looks great in a wide variety of colours. The last time I owned this car, I painted it blue. This time I tried yellow, and as it turned out, it can actually pull off yellow without looking stupid, as some cars would. But what does it have to offer for 20 million credits? Well, it's got a naturally aspirated 3-litre engine, it's rear-wheel drive, obviously, and fully tuned. The specs, for the money, don't sound that great, because at the end of the day, of the 20 million credit models, this is the slowest. Most of the other 20 million cars are mid-engine monsters, the GT40, the Mark IV Ford, the Ferrari P4, etc. They are Le Mans cars, essentially, that were hugely successful or massively iconic, but also very fast. Now, this car, definitely not slow, but it is the slowest of the 20 million credit cars. How fast is it, though? Well, actually, saying that it's the slowest is kind of a relative term. That's like saying that a Koenigsegg is slower than a Veyron. Well, yeah, maybe so in its original incarnation, but it's still not a slow car just because it's not quite as quick. It's likewise with this Ferrari. Saying it's slower does kind of give a wrong impression, because slow it certainly is not. In fact, it has a top speed of around 220 miles per hour from a 463 horsepower engine, and that's pretty impressive performance. Of course, it doesn't have NOS, and that's not with draft, so pretty impressive performance for a car of its spec. Now, the torque figure is probably not surprisingly pretty low at 309 pound-feet, which is typical of most Italian racing engines. They just don't go for torque. That was more of the American way of doing things, whereas Ferraris tend to go for higher revs, higher power, rather than torque. And also, they're known for being pretty lightweight, and this car is no exception. It only weighs 808 kilos with the weight loss package. And even for a racing car, that's really light. A lot lighter than it looks, I would say. It looks to me like around a 975 kilo car. So the fact that it weighs 808 is very impressive. Now the power to weight ratio, thanks primarily to that very low weight, is a pretty decent 573 brake horsepower per tonne. And the PP is a pretty competitive, I would say, 545. So no way near as high as some of the other classics on the game, especially the expensive classics. Most of them tend to sit more up around the 600 PP region. And this car, to be honest, at the 545 PP level, is a pretty competitive model. The handling is very smooth, very impressive for a classic car. The handling has a surprising, reassuring feel. It doesn't really surprise you. Many classics, especially cars like the Stratos or sometimes the Jaguar XJ13, but we'll get to that later on in the series, can sometimes catch you out. They'll suddenly be a bit snappy or lose grip for no apparent reason. This car doesn't do that. It has very, very good handling. It's very easy to drive, which is, again, impressive for a car of its age. And the performance is very usable. It has great performance from not a huge amount of power. And the great thing about that is it means you have the performance that you need, but you're not constantly fighting against wheel spin, which is good, because wheel spin is wasting time. So, overall, for 20 million credits, is it worth it? Well, there are a number of different criteria to classify something as being worth or not worth a certain amount of money. From a performance point of view, no, of course it's not worth 20 million. I don't think there's any single car in the game that's worth 20 million credits for pure performance. If there was, it would perhaps be the Tomahawk, purely because it's completely unbeatable. Apart from that, though, by definition, nothing else could be worth that. So, no, of course its performance isn't worth 20 million. You could get the same performance or better from a car for 60 grand or 40 grand. However, from a collector's point of view, and from a classic car point of view, it's a pretty much essential piece. It's essential for any Ferrari fan. It's essential for any expensive classic fan, which, even though I'm not a fan of the car, I am a fan of collecting these expensive models. And it's actually, I would say, possibly the best handling of all the High Rollers series. Certainly handles much easier than many of the others like the GT40. Possibly not better than the Daytona Cobra, but a little bit easier to drive than the Daytona. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.